Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide, Volume 3. And today I have the amazing Lionel with me. Hi, Lionel, how are you?
I'm fine. Hi, Saskia. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Happy New Year to you, and thank you so much for coming on the show today and taking
Oh,
your story.
thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
It's an
It's a
absolute
pleasure.
pleasure to have you as well. So thank you very much. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Okay, well, I get asked where I'm from quite a bit, and that's a bit of a tricky question with me. I like to say my mother and planet Earth. That's my main answers. People then ask me where I was born, and I say Scotland, but I'm not Scottish. My accent's somewhere mid-Atlantic. I grew up in Canada, but I'm a British citizen. I've lived in many countries. Right now, I live in Vienna in Austria,
Yeah,
and I feel quite at home here. So,
fantastic.
yeah, it's a long answer. Some people have a two-word answer to that question.
That's
So,
absolutely fine. And do you want to tell the listeners your name and what you do, Lionel?
okay, my name is Lionel Lodge, and I've worked in the entertainment music industry all my life. My father was in it. So when I was a very young kid, I thought everybody grew up with in that sort of world. My dad was emceeing the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, the Who, traveling around with them. He was quite a big name in the British music scene back in the '60s, and yeah. And I started out on the creative side, but I also in school I really liked. I took saxophone lessons. I learned the piano. I learned instruments like this, but I also was very much interested in, funny enough, bookkeeping and math,
Wow.
which was a bit of a. So I had some friends that were sort of on the geeky side, and I had some friends that were on the really cool side. Mhm. And,
That's
and
beautiful.
yeah, and so I was always interested in the business side as well as the creative side, and I've written hundreds of songs and co-written many more. I've played thousands of shows in many countries and released quite a few albums and played on other people's albums and all that sort of thing. And at different points along the way, I would see something and I go, the way the industry was working, the mechanics of the industry, some aspect of it, and I
Yeah.
think, well, that's not really smart. Why is it do? Why are they working it that way? Well, there's a better way to do that, I think. And I'd start a company, start doing building that, and I've had a few companies along the way. Two of them I exited, and now I'm now running a company called SyncLodge, which is focused on the sync licensing element of the entertainment industry. And it is a bit of a mouthful to explain it because most people think that it's like one of those other companies. There's no company like us. We're really um, really standing alone on that. We're not a marketplace. We don't curate. We don't store data. We access all the world's music, all the world's music data, and it's it's like a project management system for the music supervisors and the visual production companies who license the music for visual productions. And there's also a portal for the copyright holders, for independent artists, for publishers, record labels, and they all work together. We don't get involved with the deals. We don't when there are middlemen. Okay, if there's some middlemen in the industry that are very useful and very helpful. I don't think in that situation it's really needed. And so we built this system where they can all work together and they can bridge their own network, their own communities, their own business contacts. And it's been quite a ride. When I first started it, when I first had the idea,
Yeah.
I thought, okay, this is a big one. This is a really big one. Like, really, Lionel, you're going to do this? And so I went around and talked to some people I knew that were the heads of some of the bigger record companies, well, the three big ones in their publishing departments, and I told them, I'm thinking of doing this. I'm thinking of building an ecosystem for everybody involved with sync licensing globally to work together to empower creatives on the visual side as well as on the music side. And this is what I'm thinking of doing. And I had a one-page PDF, large lettering they could easily look at and read. And I said, tell me it's a stupid idea. And it saved me a bunch of years of anguish and a lot of hard work. And nobody said that to me, unfortunately. They all said, "No, that sounds. If you're going to build that, that sounds great. Would you? That yes, that sounds like a wonderful thing." So yes, it took us 4 years to build it, and we launched in April 2022.
Congratulations.
And this year we have won a whole bunch of global innovation awards, and keep getting magazines and all this sort of thing. I always wonder why they focus on us. I think we're quite small and under the radar most of the time, but it's going well, and we get feedback from users that are very, very positive, which is really nice.
Fantastic. And it sounds like you've always been a problem solver. You've always wanted to solve a problem. So is that
Yes,
since you was little? Has that always been the case?
yes. In school, it was a pain in the ass to my teachers, and I do apologize to them. I doubt they're most of them probably aren't alive anymore, but I was the one that would always ask why.
I get you.
Why? Why? And my English teacher, I drove him nuts. Well, I had this one English teacher I actually drove nuts because I would say, "Well, why is there a silent G? And why is that word like that? Why is that? Why is that called that?
Yeah.
Why is that?" And things didn't make sense to me. I wanted to know why it was like that. And yes, I used to get told to put my hand down and just stop asking questions.
Yeah, but I think you're just structure as well, aren't you? And I think that's part of it. It's doing things in a different way and trying to fix problems that exist in the industry. Because I really feel that, and I think that's really important because that way we have a meaningful change, and it doesn't just help yourself; it helps other people and communities. So well done for doing that. That's fantastic.
That's the main thing.
Yeah,
That's the main thing. That's all my companies have. That has been the main focus of how it can help. It's making money is very important too,
yeah,
right? But I also believe that if you have a positive impact, then it's a lot easier to make the money.
that's right. And you've got a meaning, you have a purpose, and you have a
Yeah.
passion. So I think that all of these things come through, don't they?
Yes, and there's nothing better feeling at the end of the day or the end of the week where you feel okay. It was a hard week. We worked through it, but we did. We helped a lot of people. This has been a good week for quite a few people. So and building that out with SyncLodge, like we're in a lot of different countries now, and which is an amazing thing how it keeps growing.
Yeah.
And but realizing that we're actually giving them tools. And one of the things you see that there's about SyncLodge that makes people ask how they start asking me questions, which I do love, is we don't charge any membership fee. We don't charge any sign up fees. It doesn't
Wow.
cost you anything to use SyncLodge.
Right.
The visual production side, the music supervisors, it's totally free for them, and it is best in class, state of the art tools. Like in the 4 years that we spent building it, we had input from hundreds, absolutely hundreds of people in the industry. And we started out while we started building it with about 200 advisors from different sectors of the industry, and we'd show them things and tell us, okay, what's stupid about this?
Yeah.
What don't you like? Right? What's missing?
Brilliant.
And so we have built them a system for them, what they wanted, and we don't charge them anything to use it.
So people need to sign up to that, right?
Yeah, they need you sign up as a music creator, copyright holder, music copyright holder. That is the most complicated registration part of the system
Okay.
because you have to tell us who you are, where you registered, what you actually have the rights to administer for sync licensing, what
Right.
authority you have, and then we verify that. We check that. We check that quite thoroughly, and then once your account's authorized, then you can see inside the system your whole catalog and where it's registered and how it's registered.
Brilliant. That's very useful. Very, very
Yeah,
useful.
it's I look at mine every now and then and find that the music industry data is a funny thing, and every now and then with my catalog, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one. So every now and then somebody else seems to all of a sudden have co-written a song with me,
Okay.
right? And it's like, okay, wait a sec, I wrote that song 20 years ago, and now there's somebody else's name next to it in this PRO.
Right.
PRO is a performance rights organization, PRS for music in the UK.
Yes.
And they've registered with a PRO in another country and said they co-wrote that song with me, and that got through to this other database,
Right.
and it takes months to actually get rid of them.
So
It's a
they're,
real pain.
so they're getting paid for work they didn't actually do. Is that the case?
Yes, they
Right.
are. They are getting, and I've had it on the publishing side with ASCAP in the States. This was about 5 years ago. There was somebody that set up a Lodge Publishing, my last name, Lodge Publishing, and they said they were the publishing company for my whole catalog,
Oh, right.
right? And I wouldn't have seen that if it wasn't for looking, because of SyncLodge, looking through databases.
Brilliant. Sounds
And
wonderful.
yeah, for quite a long time they were getting all my publishing,
Oh, I'm so
and it took about 3 months to get them off.
yeah.
And it wouldn't have been worth. I could have tried to sue them, but they were in a eastern country,
Okay.
and I, to take them to court would have cost me probably more than the money they took from me.
Yeah.
And then, but how do I collect?
Okay.
Right. So it's a useless thing. You just try to cut them
Well,
off. So,
yeah.
um, but so anyway, the hardest thing is for copyright holders to register with SyncLodge. After that, it's like I said, it's free to use. When a copyright holder gets a sync placement with it, we ask for 2% of the
Okay.
license,
Okay. That's
which
very
is
reasonable.
which
Very,
is
very.
nothing. You pay that for transfers on fees on with other systems, right? So it's nothing. So it's the most the idea is that if you have, big companies can afford it. They
Yeah.
can afford to pay
Yeah.
for great tools, right? Smaller companies, independents, they can't afford to pay for those tools.
Yeah.
So how do we make it fair so that the smaller entities in the industry can
Mhm.
actually work at the same level as the large entities? How do we do that?
Yeah.
And this is the business model we came up with.
Yeah. Well, it sounds fantastic because it looks like you can see where things are going and how to manage them. So it makes it more manageable and just a lot
Mhm.
more streamlined, which I think is fantastic. So, Lionel, have you had musical education from a young age as well?
Yeah. So being my father was a DJ in the 60s in the UK, right? So we
Yeah.
had all this music coming in, all the great 60s stuff,
Okay.
DJ copies of it playing loud in our house. Music was the obvious thing for me. My first instrument was the piano,
Okay.
and which I do tell people, anybody that asks me if they want to start learning music, start with the piano.
Yeah.
The piano's the best. It's all laid out, 88 keys and all that.
Yeah.
And I took weekly lessons. I was very much into Elton John's piano playing at that time. This was the very early 70s,
Yeah.
and and my piano player came for, I think it was like 9 months, once a week, and then one day just stopped coming. I don't know why he stopped coming. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
was a pretty fast learner, so
Yeah.
maybe he was, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Never heard from him again. And so then I looked around, and the school I was going to, the grade school I was going to, they didn't have a music course.
Okay.
But there was another one that was in the same part of London, Ontario, where I grew up, that did. So I switched schools and I started learning the saxophone.
Oh, I love the
And,
saxophone. I
oh,
love
yeah,
it
too. Me too. And I played that for quite a few years. I learned it right through high school. I could sight read. I could do all that. And then was playing it with other musicians, as bands.
too.
And then my first band, that was my band with my brother and a friend of ours, Jeff Kennedy. Um, I was playing the saxophone and singing. My brother was playing drums, and Jeff was playing guitar. And we couldn't get a bass player.
Okay. And you need a
Right?
bass, right? You need
You
one.
need a bass player.
Yeah.
We really needed a bass player, right? And okay, thing is, what we were pretty bad. Yeah, we were pretty bad. So, but here's a bit of a funny story. If I could go into this quickly, we this was in 1980,
Okay.
1979, 1980, and punk was a big thing, right? And there was a lot of punk bands around, and there was a lot of punk bands that were sort of, anarchy armbands at the weekend, but living with their mom during the week
Well,
and driving their parents' car, right? And we'd say, well, if anarchy, if the whole establishment, if the whole system fell down, you wouldn't know what to do, right? You
yeah.
don't talk to me about anarchy, right? You know, and so we started something called, we thought that it was quite silly living in London, Ontario, and calling for anarchy. So we started a band called The Catch, and we played what we call fish rock.
Okay. Cool.
And fish rock was I think it was the most punk thing that was going on then, because we were just, making fun of the people that were joining the scene to be part of the scene without really understanding it. So they would spray paint on the walls in the alleyways of the city, tear down the government and all this, and we would spray paint Fisher people too, and can tuna. Right, we'd have these graffitis, right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and so yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. But so I long story short, boy, do I ever ramble sometimes.
All
Um,
right. I love it.
Long story short, we couldn't find a bass player, so I sold my saxophone, bought a bass amp, and bought a bass guitar.
Yeah.
Right, and that got me into the strings instruments, and I went from there to guitar, so 6 string guitar, and and on from there.
Wow, very impressive. So you've got many musical talents and you can play many instruments and you've got a very good business brain. What a mixture. That's what you
What a
need.
mixture!
That's what you
Keeps me feeling crazy sometimes. Mhm.
but I think that's really what you need to survive and have longevity in your career, which you obviously have. So, you know what? I take my hat off to you. You're very inspirational. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh,
And
you're
what
welcome. You're welcome.
kind of challenges and barriers have you had to overcome and faced, obviously, through your career and to be here today? I'm sure there's been so many.
Yeah, well, my I grew up in a middle class area, right? A white middle class male. Right? There wasn't that, there was bullies, there was things like that around. But the biggest challenge I actually personally had was I never wanted to be famous, but
Okay.
I wanted to make music,
Yeah.
right? So and I felt that fame would be a curse. I felt fame would be like a real negative thing and growing up in my father's world when I was a kid
Yeah.
and seeing these big stars and what they were going through.
It's your first-hand experience of that.
Yeah, I thought that must be hell, right? You can't go to a cafe with your friend and just have a peaceful coffee or have a meal somewhere without everybody bugging you, right? And then the people that are around you, are they around you just because you're famous or are they around you because they're really your friends?
That's so true.
Right? That sort of thing. So I avoided it. I moved. And it wasn't a conscious thing so much, but looking back over my life, I've realized I've done this. I did this so many different times where I'm in an area, I put a band together with local musicians, I write songs for that sound, for that band, we play a whole bunch of shows, record an album, release the album, and move to another country.
Got the formula right.
Right? So very, very, very hard to promote.
Okay.
Right? Very, you build up inertia, you build up this whole following, and then where's Lionel? I don't know. He's gone somewhere. I don't know.
Now it's got bored now. It's moved on.
Yeah, well, it wasn't really bored as much. It was just like at the time it felt like circumstance, but I look back and see it as a pattern. One very interesting thing though is I've experienced quite a few different cultures.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and musical cultures as well.
Yeah.
Right. So meeting new musicians in a part of the world that I've never even thought about living in,
Hmm.
and sometimes the language, the main language we had between each other was music.
Right.
As
Yeah.
far as words go, there was a little bit that we could communicate, but it was music.
Right.
And experiencing that, and there was sometimes I would take like I'm mainly in like the Americana sort of thing. I grew up, like I said, with rock and punk music, right? But I also like country and blues and Celtic and Tex-Mex stuff, Cajun stuff, right? And so, but I write in this way mostly, and then taking that and putting that in a very different culture where their harmonic and melodic instincts are very different from mine,
Yes.
and how they would play it and the rhythms they play with it. It was so wonderful and exciting for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very experimental, and I suppose it's learning from each other, and that's beautiful. That's really
Mhm.
nice. So, did that impact your career negatively? But by the sounds of it, it's positively. So it didn't
Well,
actually.
yeah, yeah. I like to say I've been very, very successful at not being famous.
Well, if that's what you want, then I suppose you've achieved what you wanted, right? And I think a lot of people would like, but I think I would like to be successful. I think fame is one of those things where I think you have to be careful with it and use it in the right ways. But I think if you do use it in the right ways for good and to change people's lives and perceptions, then it can be a good thing. But
Yeah,
it's a cooker, isn't it? And you've got to be very careful of that.
yeah. You have to be careful with it. And
Yeah.
the other thing I thought when I was in my early 20s, like we got signed to through another company to a major record label, right?
Yeah.
And this was in the late 80s, and you know at that point in my life, looking back, honestly, if I had become famous, it probably would have really messed me up.
Right.
Right? I probably wouldn't have been able to handle it well. I probably would have turned into a real asshole, actually.
Mhm.
Right? I can see that in me, right? So it's a good thing I avoided it, and it's something to really be careful with. I do teach at different music institutes, and one of the things I say is, you know, why?
Yeah,
Why do you want to make music?
yeah,
Right? If it's to become famous, there's a lot easier ways to become famous.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
If you want
that's
to make money, if you want to make money, invent a new salty snack.
yeah.
Right? Right? You can make a lot of money with salty snacks. Right? Right? Do
Like,
something like that. Right? If that's all you, it's a lot easier ways to make money than making music.
yeah,
But and the great music is comes from people that just their heart and their soul is in the communication of it. Right? They need to communicate this, and they have this feeling of the atmosphere and the melodic sense and the way it works. And for them, then they have a song or a piece of music that really communicates that.
yeah.
And as human beings, one of the beautiful things about human beings is our creativity.
Yes, I love
Mm,
being creative.
Yeah, and I think all humans love being creative, and sometimes you can be creative building bridges, right? You can be creative like in many ways. It doesn't have to be in the arts,
Yeah,
right? And but we are creative beings instinctually, and that's what's actually got us out of the caves,
yeah,
right? That
yeah,
got us to the way we can live now. And being out, if and music, I think is the great communicator. I
yeah,
think it's the greatest form of communication we have because of all the layers to it. All the with the sounds, with the rhythms, with the harmonies, melodies. The frequencies of it communicates so much more than just the words, right?
mm,
And and so when you have that urge to communicate through music, then please give the world, right. Please communicate it. Please do it, right, and do it for you.
yeah,
I've worked with different musicians that they have somebody. This is why I left the major record label deal,
mm.
was because they were saying, okay, yes, but the market is wanting this,
I get you.
right? So we want this type of music.
Yes.
It's like, well, no, no. Actually, you don't know who you're talking to. Sorry to say, but no, I'm not a wind up. Okay, now make that kind of music. No, that doesn't work with me at all. I had some very big problems with them, but
Right.
it's there is this thing of the industry will push you in a direction,
Yes, I've heard that a
right?
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just the desire of wanting to actually get some attention, and I understand that from an artist. You want some
Some,
feedback, you want some sort of, you put something out, you don't want it just to be silent, right?
yeah.
You want some sort of feedback on it, and subconsciously maybe thinking, okay, if I make it more this way, that seems popular. I have a very hard time with that. I think the purest, most beautiful music that stands the test of time was made because that person really wanted to make that.
Yes. And it's very personal to them,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah. And
It's
you look at some stars that had, there's some bands that or artists that have come out and they've had one album that
mm,
really did well,
yeah.
and then they try to do it again,
And it doesn't
and then
work.
they try to do it again.
And
That
it,
same thing, right? Right? And it just doesn't work, and it's not as good as the last time because the inspiration is different. The original inspiration was communication. The second project's inspiration was do another one of those,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I get you.
right? Right? And so the inspiration is very different. You look at someone like David Bowie, right? Who just kept saying, "Okay, been there, done that. Now what else will I feel like doing?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like Madonna, she's another one of those where you're continually evolving, aren't you? You're changing your style, you're changing your music. And again, you're being authentic and true to yourself, but you're ever evolving and growing. So I think that's what we do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and change is a funny thing because some people don't like change, but change is the one thing we can count on,
Yeah.
right? In this universe, everything's always changing.
Yeah.
So embrace it and enjoy the change. That's what I say.
Wise words. Thank you for that. And thinking about equality, diversity, and inclusion at the moment in the entertainment industry and looking back to when you started, do you think we've made much progress? Do you think there's been many changes, or do you still think we're at the
Yeah. There's been a lot of progress, right?
right?
But there is a thing on the gender side.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've thought about this a lot. You know, when you look at, there's some of the biggest stars in the '60s and '70s were women.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you look at Aretha Franklin, Janis Joplin, like the list you mentioned. Madonna is okay. She was in the '80s and currently, right? But there have been quite a few women, but there have been more men.
Yes.
Okay, okay, and then the question is, why is that? Why is that? And sometimes I think it's just maybe personal drive, and
Mhm.
sometimes I think it's also having the role model.
Right. Yes.
You
Very important.
having stand up role models. I think um what's her name from the Eurythmics? What's her name? The
I'm not
Eurythmics.
names. I'm really
Okay,
I'm good with faces,
So-
but not with names.
somebody in the audience is yelling it at the screen right now. It'll come to me. She is and was a great role model.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't about her being female. It was about her being a singer,
Yeah.
right? And she's a great singer. Now that's bugging me, that name. Um,
Thank you. Oh, my phone's over there.
we have we have one of the great things that's happened in the last is just a few years
Yeah.
is the acceptance of sexual identity, sexual orientation, the differences in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, there are pockets of people that still have a hard time with it. Yeah, there are this, but generally, it's not like okay, somebody they out themselves and they're gay or they're lesbian. The world goes, oh my God, isn't that weird? I remember when Elton John did that, and there was a lot of friends of mine at the time that well, not a lot, but there was a few friends that were Elton John fans that all of a sudden thought it wasn't cool to like him because he
Right.
was gay.
Such a shame.
Yeah. It's stupid, right? It's really just stupid. Right? It's got nothing to do with it, right?
Exactly.
And obviously, his sexual orientation and his emotional base inside himself affected the way he made his music, and they loved his music. So, okay, that's where it came from, right?
Yeah.
What's wrong with what's a negative? I don't see the negative,
No.
right? But now there is a lot of people that are feeling like, okay, I can just be me now, right? I can
Yeah.
be me, and I can actually dress the way I want to, and I can say that I feel instead of being a man, I feel like I'm a woman, and I want to be treated like I'm a woman. Great thing, right? And the when I was a kid, like I was open, I was blessed by my father and my mother was a visual artist,
Yes.
and very open-minded people, and they had gay friends and lesbian friends, right? And for me as a kid, it was like a natural. Okay, so what? Right? There was no that's weird or different. It
It was
was
just, it's just normal to you because you'd seen it all the time. It's just the same.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just the way that person is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I see.
and this is not okay. Everybody's different, so everybody's different. Okay, everybody's different. Okay,
I love
you know,
that. Wouldn't it be so boring if everyone was the same? It would just be so boring, the world, wouldn't it? I'm so glad we're all different.
yeah.
It makes us
And one of the shames about when I grew up. I was born in 1962, so in 1977 I was 15. Right, that's when things started opening up and being a little more liberal.
human.
Before that point, it was very much fit in, act like everybody else, dress like everybody else. And the worst thing that you could be called as a guy in school was they didn't call you homosexual or gay; they called you a fag,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that would make you a social leper,
Yeah.
right? Right, and it happened to people that I don't know. I have no idea if they were gay or not. Right, it was some sort of social dynamic happened and they were picked on, and that was the outcome of it. Right,
Yeah.
to suppress that on human beings, I've never understood that. I've never, and except for it seems to be that the people that act that way have a lot of fear,
I think so. I think
right?
so.
A lot of fear, and I think when I look back, I think, okay, there was these couple people in high school that were really macho and anti-gay, and could call people fags and stuff. I'm sure they were gay and they were just terrified about it.
Yeah. I think that a lot as well. I think sometimes they can't accept it themselves, so they have an internal battle with themselves, and they dislike themselves that much they don't like anyone else either. So that's how
Yeah,
I yeah.
but
Do you
there's
know?
nothing more beautiful than somebody that is free,
Yes, exactly. And
free to
that's
be who they are.
Yeah, and to be honest, when you're free, it's very liberating, and it makes you feel like you are who you need to be, and you can survive, and you can live, and you can breathe, and you can just be respected. And I think that's really, really important, you know.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about me is and my upbringing and all of that is I've never seen any point not to be me.
Yes.
Right? Right? Why wouldn't I be me?
Yeah.
If you don't like me, okay, that's cool. Right? That's fine by me. Right? Right? But I'm not going to become somebody else just so that you like me. I've never understood that. I've never been like that. I understand that other people, it's an insecurity. It's trying to fit into social norms and all that.
But what is normal? What is the norm these days?
Yeah,
What is
yeah. Normal is a terrible word, right?
exactly?
Normal is one of the words, but I think one of the very worst words in the English language is the word normal.
Yeah.
Right? But the scenario of you're at a dinner party and there's maybe 8 people around a table and everybody is homogenized and fitting in and not wanting to speak their mind. They're not wanting to make any social ripples,
And build
and
a
so
good
we're all
leader.
talking about things that are going on, but with a very conservative and homogenized way, and it's the boringest experience you can ever have.
And
Right?
build a good leader because I'm always rippling the waves somewhere. Everywhere I walk, there's someone moves or someone looks around, or sometimes it's
Yeah.
nice, but you can feel it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And we are the Marcus Aurelius. Do you know who he is?
No, I don't.
Marcus Aurelius. There's a book you can get called. Actually, I'll send you a copy on PDF. It's called Meditations, and he was a Roman emperor.
Okay.
Okay, okay, and this was somewhere around I think 78 AD,
Okay.
70 AD. So we're back in there. He's in there, maybe 100 AD, somewhere in there. And he wrote down his meditations. He
Okay.
wrote down his thoughts, right? And
Okay.
it never meant it to be published. It was just him getting his thoughts out, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that he wrote about was the insignificance of our own lives,
Mm.
right? That if things are so important to us right now, but you give it 100, 200, 300, 400 years,
Completely
and
different.
nobody's going to care about the fact that you didn't like that person, so you got really upset at this social thing because they said something you didn't like, and everybody blew up, and then you got kicked out, and you didn't get invited back to dinner again. Nobody's going to care, right? Right? Yeah. The ironic thing about Marcus Aurelius is, though, and he wrote that about his own insignificance, but here we are talking about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? 2,000 years later.
Exactly.
Right. So it's okay. So there is a bit of a thing
That's,
to that. Some people do
yeah.
continue on,
Yeah.
but the idea that it's we are so insignificant. This planet is insignificant in the universe, right? It's like the power struggles that we have of little people trying to be more powerful in their area or dominate certain parts of business or territories. And to me, it's like an ant nest in my backyard where all the ants start fighting each other because they want to be king of that one ant nest. And you just go, what the hell, guys? Right? Like it's just one ant nest.
Yeah, there's enough room for everybody, isn't there? And to be quite honest with you, I think it's about respecting everyone and treating everyone equally and fairly. And that's really what I look for. And I think, when there's ego, there is a lot of egos in the music industry, and people do think, I don't know, that they're better than others at times. And I think that's
Oh,
sad. We are
yeah.
human and we are equal. And that's the thing. I think some people do use that sometimes.
Yeah. Ego is a funny thing, isn't it? To
Yeah.
think that you're better than somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay, you have different experiences, you have abilities that somebody else might not have, or maybe your element of those abilities is stronger than theirs. Doesn't make you any better. Like
Also,
it's such a strange perception that, oh, now here I am, I'm a big important person, and we have this one thing that's attached to money.
yeah.
I make more money than you, so I'm more important than you. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, right.
I, I laugh at that sort of thing, and I also see it as a form of insecurity.
Yeah.
I
True.
see it as somebody that if they have to act that way, if they have to try to prove that they're better than other people, then I really think that inside themselves they're telling themselves they don't deserve what they have,
Right.
right? And they're not worthy.
Yeah.
And they see other people that it's like in the song Common People.
Oh, I love
You
that.
wonder why they burn so bright,
Mhm.
right? Right. The common people, how do they seem to have such great big lives? They burn so bright, and they're having like these small little lives, right? They can't, it's like this is in a way. Uh, I, I I find humans to be very curious that way, and I think one of the best things that we can be with things that we don't know is to be curious,
Yeah, yeah,
is to really ask those questions of why. Right?
yeah,
Not in an offensive way, but in an honest way of, okay, this is new to me.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah, yeah,
this is new. This is something brand new to me. Wow, and it's like the children. When they're the first few years, everything is new to them, and they're full of awe and wonder, right? And they're not. It's not a maliciousness. It's not like, okay, that's different, so I don't like it. It's, wow, that's different.
yeah.
That's so cool.
Oh, that's
Right?
nice. I like that.
Yeah, and having being able to bring that out of ourselves, I find is, and again, music is one of the greatest ways of doing that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And if the listeners want to find you, Lionel, and also SyncLodge, is there anywhere that the listeners can go and find you, check your work out, check your music out, and also SyncLodge?
Sure, okay. Um, I do live in Vienna, but please don't try to find me here. Um, but I am the only Lionel Lodge on the internet,
Okay.
so and that's a funny thing to say, but it is true. And but, on if it's a business thing, I prefer LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I know.
just easy to find on LinkedIn, request to connect, right? And if they talk about this podcast that they saw me on this, then that makes me go, okay, okay. Right? I
Fantastic.
do. The only people I don't connect with on LinkedIn are people that are trying to sell me software,
Okay.
and they haven't obviously seen that I run a tech company with our own software
Yeah.
department. And
It's a lack of research, isn't it, Lionel? And that's the thing. I'll leave all of your information in the description as well below. If anyone wants to check
yeah,
it out.
SyncLodge is just sync.lodge.com.
Fantastic.
So
And
look
is
it
there
up.
any wins or major wins or successes that you would like to share with the listeners before we go? We've got 2 minutes left.
Oh, 2 minutes left. Okay. Wins and successes. Meeting you has been great.
Oh, thank you.
This has been a very nice. We met late last year. This has been very nice. With SyncLodge, it's just a series of movements, right? And everyone, it seems like, okay, mostly moving forward. Occasionally, there's a bit of a half step backwards,
Yeah.
but and we've won a lot of awards, and I keep getting, the
Congratulations.
CEO of the year sort of thing, which is embarrassing for me, but
Isn't it
I'm proud of it too.
good?
Yeah. But
That's
it's just, a big thing of it is the amount of traveling I'm able to do now because of the business.
yeah.
And at the end of January, I'm teaching at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester, and that's going to be interesting. Being able to be invited to things like that, and just if people think that I have an interesting perspective and I can teach people things about the music industry,
That's
this
fantastic.
is nice.
Well, thank
Mhm.
you again for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. Make sure you
You're
have a
very
great
welcome.
evening, and we will see each other again soon.
Yes, I look forward to it. Thank
Thank
you.
you, I know. Thanks. Right, I've just got to make this big and stop the recording. There we go.